Welcome to the Colts Squad Show. I'm your host, Derek Schultz, and I don't have a Hall of Fame vote, but if I did, it'd go to Alan Pinkett.
And I'm Zach Hicks, and of course I go to Alan Pinkett as well, but also Reggie Wayne, man. Come on, let's get Reggie Wayne in the Hall of Fame.
I'm Jake Arthur. Alan Pinkett for Hall of Fame, but also Kenny Moore for Walter Payton, Man of the Year.
I'm Alan Pinkett, former Oiler. Appreciate all the love, but the Hall of Fame is always hurry up and wait.
Colts Nation, rise up. It's the Colts Squad. Everything Indianapolis Colts every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the Circle City, the way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. It's time to squad up. The Colts Squad Show starts now.
Welcome to the Colts Squad Show, Crossover Thursday, presented by PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. I'm Derek Schultz, longtime Indy sports talker, columnist for the Indianapolis Business Journal. I am joined by a Notre Dame legend and a Hall of Famer in our hearts, longtime NFL running back Alan Pinkett, and our Locked On Colts duo of Jake Arthur and Zach Hicks are here too. We are fully squatted up and ready to go. Just a couple of days before the Super Bowl in Santa Clara, just days away from Super Bowl 60 and minutes away. Well, we say minutes away right now. It's 9/11 Eastern time, and who knows when they're eventually going to get over to the actual Hall of Fame voting in this award show tonight. It's the NFL Honor Show, but we'll talk about exactly that to lead off the show. Reggie Wayne and Adam Vinatieri eagerly awaiting potential Hall calls here. By the time you're watching this or listening to this, perhaps that has already been decided, but we'll go around the room and talk about whether or not we feel strongly or not so strongly, however we feel about the Hall of Fame cases of two legendary Colts, what you would change about the Hall of Fame process. I'm sure we have a little bit of an airing of grievances, as does everybody, when it comes to the actual selection process. Notably with what happened with the senior pool with Bill Belichick and Robert Kraft, and now what we're seeing with some deserving players having to wait for a long, long time. We'll make our Super Bowl 60 picks coming up here in segment number 3 between the Seahawks and Patriots. And also, I just thought this would be kind of fun to end the show tonight. Your favorite Super Bowl memory. And look, if we want to talk about Miami in 2007 for the 2000, fine. Like, obviously, that was the Colts Super Bowl win. I was kind of hoping that we would have some non-Colts memories as well. Like, I think we all remember when we were kids, what's the first Super Bowl that you remember? And I'm sorry, Alan, because you're just going to feel awfully, awfully horrible when Zach gives the first Super Bowl that he remembers. But we'll talk about that coming up in segment 4. But guys, let's talk about Reggie and Adam Vinatieri. And Jake, I actually kind of wanted to go to you first for this. I know, just to kind of give people a peek behind the curtain. This is now, it's hard to believe, year 7 for Reggie Wayne, year 2 for Adam Vinatieri. I think there was some surprise in some circles that Adam Vinatieri actually didn't get in on the first ballot last year, but Reggie Wayne has been waiting around for a long time. But here's a guy, number 87, who is a beloved Colt. One of the most popular, probably just to Peyton Manning, even though I know there are a lot of people that feel like Reggie Wayne is their favorite all-time Colt, and a guy that was a very accomplished player, top 10 all-time in receptions and yards in the regular season and postseason among receivers. Only Jerry Rice has done that. But it looks like, it has not been revealed yet, but it would be a surprise. I don't think I'm going on a limb to say that if number 87 was part of the Hall of Fame class this year.
Yeah. The reason he's been waiting so long, and I hate it because it's just such a dumb argument, is I feel like nationally among the voters, there's a perception that he's a product of playing with Peyton Manning, which, sure, like, Peyton had to have great players around him to be who he was, and these guys also benefited from playing with the greatest quarterback of all time. Suck it, Patriots fans. But, like, you could say that about everyone. You know what I mean? Like, Jerry Rice played with Steve Young and Joe Montana throughout his career, and then MVP Rich Gannon in Oakland when he became the oldest receiver to do everything, basically. You know what I mean? Like, you can have these conversations and spin it every which way. But Reggie, let me kick some numbers to you here. So by the time Reggie Wayne retired, and mind you, passing in the NFL exploded in the later portion of his career, and then after he had retired, he retired 7th in NFL history in receptions, 8th in receiving yards, 22nd in receiving touchdowns. And then I also saw on Twitter, hat tip to Garrison Carr, Reggie is one of just 9 players in NFL history with 1,000+ catches, 14,000+ yards, and 80+ receiving touchdowns. Again, just one of 9 players ever to do those things. That right there, just you have limited yourself into such a tiny box of such a small amount of guys who have ever done something. And that's, Derek, you mentioned the postseason numbers. When he retired, his postseason numbers were even more prolific. So the guy has a Super Bowl. He's played in 2 of them. He led the NFL in receiving yard, or I believe he may have led. I can't remember that one. Yeah, at least once. So he helped bridge the era from Peyton Manning to Andrew Luck. Luck leading the Colts to the postseason in his first 3 seasons. And of course, Reggie being an enormous part of that. The Orange Glove game, the Chuck Strong game as well. Like he has monumental moments too, because that's another thing that people bring up is, well, what is their big moment? The opening touchdown for the Colts in the Super Bowl. He scored the game-winning or the tying touchdown or game-winning touchdown in the 4th and 2 game against the Patriots. He had the Chuck Strong game and that one-handed catch against Charles Woodson. He has these poster moments in NFL history. Him, Marvin Harrison, Dallas Clark were the only trio ever to all hit 100 catches in a season or whatever that was, Derek. So there are a lot of things that Reggie has accomplished that people just seem to ignore or sweep under the rug. And I just think it's ridiculous. The biggest argument being that he played with Peyton Manning. So what? Like, there's been a ton of great pass catcher tandems throughout history, and they haven't all been punished the way that Reggie Wayne has been punished. So I think it's dumb.
Yeah, I will actually say that as someone who was fine with Reggie Wayne waiting for the first 4 or 5 years, I'm kind of on that side. Like, I was one of those people who, like, I had Andre Johnson going in over him. I was fine with that. Calvin Johnson going in over him. Very much fine with those 2. I don't know if the big argument is that he played with Peyton Manning. I think the argument is he played with Marvin Harrison. And that's more of the argument. Like, he wasn't a traditional number 1 wide receiver. But here's kind of my counterpoint to that. And maybe in a very strict world, in a very strict sense of voting on the Hall of Fame, like if you were to vote on it like it's baseball, right? You wouldn't put someone in like Reggie Wayne. But with the standard that's been set for 60 years of doing the Hall of Fame, maybe up until the last 2 years, Reggie Wayne is by all accounts a Hall of Fame player, right? And again, if you want to say like, oh, he benefited from having Marvin Harrison taking away a lot of the coverage, well, Reggie Wayne led the NFL in receiving yards the one year that Harrison was hurt. He had 1,500 yards receiving. And also, to show the disrespect, he wasn't even a first-team All-Pro that year when he led the NFL in receiving yards and had over 100 catches. And then you go after Harrison's out of the league. And like you said, Jake, bridging that gap over to Andrew Luck and having 1,000 yards in that season with Andrew Luck as well, when he was, Wayne was like in his 30s at that point, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
Fantastic player. So yeah, if you want to be extremely strict with putting guys in the Hall of Fame and saying like, we only take the super all decade performers and all that, then you probably only put in a couple receivers and Wayne's not one of them. But that's not the standard that's been set by the Hall of Fame for 60 years. If you're putting in, dare I say, Michael Irvin, who's a very good player for those Cowboys teams, but they were a run-first football team. Like, they were a run-first football team.
Mm-hmm.
It was Emmett. Like, Emmett was the catalyst of everything. So you're gonna disparage Reggie Wayne for not being the catalyst when Michael Irvin's getting in when he wasn't the catalyst. Michael Irvin was a great player. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not trying to say that he's a bad football player, but it's just the weird standards. And when it gets to especially like small market teams, they change the standards all they want and stuff. But yeah, Reggie Wayne, I was fine with him waiting a couple years here and there. But as we're getting down to it and we're getting some first ballot guys who I don't think should be first ballot players, we have to put Devin Hester in before Reggie Wayne. Like, look, Devin Hester's fine, should be a Hall of Fame player. Over a guy who led the NFL in receiving yards, had 3 All-Pros, had over 1,000 yards in his age 30-plus seasons. Like, come on. Like, let's stop messing around with this and get him in. I know that they're leaning towards not putting him or Torrey Holt in, and maybe one day there'll be some over Sean McVay as a senior candidate. They'll get those guys in, in the future. But it's just frustrating. And Reggie Wayne, by the standard the Hall has set for most of its history, Reggie Wayne is absolutely a Hall of Fame receiver.
Well, let me tell you, what makes me feel old or reminds me that I am old. So I've retired from the league in 1994. What makes me feel old is these guys they're considering for the Hall of Fame probably weren't in puberty when I retired from the league. So it's a young man's game. And I've always not questioned, but always wondered about the criteria for what it was that got you in. I mean, there are some people that are no doubters, but there's a lot of great players that don't get in. And, I don't know if it's based on stats, the stats you came out with for Reggie Wayne would make it sound like he's a no doubter. But here we are questioning whether he will get in this time, maybe next time. Also, I guess the one thing I always hated seeing was Drew Pearson anxiously waiting for that call and never getting it. And then that one year he finally got it. So I don't know if there's a statute of limitations on when they can finally be eliminated from being eligible from the Hall of Fame. But I've got some people I played with that are in the Hall of Fame, and a lot that I know that are in the Hall of Fame, and it's a great honor. And I guess the way to sort of sum up this little segment is, good luck to all those guys. If you don't get in the first time, then it's an honor to even be considered, to be named. So everybody's a winner.
Yeah, guys, what bothers me about Wayne and Holt is that if you're going through the checklist, and we've seen this happen with some guys, Frank Gore is a great example of this, and we see this more in baseball, but Frank Gore is kind of one of those guys that he would be in based on his longevity, right? Like, he's a compiler. The reason why Gore has all these great numbers is because he's had the good fortune of staying healthy, and he's been a good running back for a really long time. And then there are some other guys like Patrick Willis who were super duper elite. Terrell Davis, right? Super elite, but for a very short window. And then you're kind of weighing, okay, do I take super elite or compiler? Wayne hits both. Wayne has the all-time numbers, and at his peak, he was an elite level player. He led the league in a receiving yards category. He was a first-team All-Pro. You know what I mean? Like, that's what bothers me about this. It's not like, oh, he didn't compile enough stats, or, oh, he wasn't elite enough. Like, technically, Wayne and Holt, I think, check those boxes, and that's why I don't really understand it, Zach.
Yeah, my very loose standards for Hall of Fame, and this is if I would have been doing it from the beginning, and I know that it's hard going purely off All-Pro, but I think it's one way to do it. I need at least like 3 or 4 All-Pro appearances. That means you are one of the top tier guys at your position in the league for a couple years. Like, if you get 1 All-Pro, that means you had that 1 year that you went crazy. But if you were doing it for 3 or 4 years, where you're, at receiver, you're a top 5 or 6 guy at your position for 3 or 4 years, especially when Reggie Wayne did it, right? Reggie Wayne was doing it in a time when there was Andre Johnson, Calvin Johnson, Terrell Owens, Randy Moss, Fitzgerald. Like, this was like the golden age. We call it the golden age of quarterbacks, just the golden age of receivers as well. Mm-hmm. I mean, so many of the best receivers that to ever play the game were playing in that time period. And Reggie Wayne was a 3-time All-Pro in that time period. Like, that means he was one of the, 6 best receivers in football for 3 separate times in the golden age of receiver. And like you said, Derek, like we see so many times they put these longevity guys in here, and it's like Frank, like, all love in the world of Frank Gore. He is a Ring of Honor guy all day and night, perfect Ring of Honor type player. Should not even be remotely considered for the Hall of Fame. He was not a difference maker like that. Pro Bowl caliber guy, had that 1 second team All-Pro, was never, and he didn't, like, yeah, there were good running backs in the early 2000s, don't get me wrong, but like, come on, man. Like, he was
just never elite. I think
he was really a solid player for a long time. But like you said, Derek, if you want to go off longevity, Reggie Wayne's top 15 in every major category as a wide receiver. If you want to go off of peak and prime, yeah, his prime, the only problem with his prime is they didn't win a Super Bowl with his prime, because his prime was a little bit later than Marvin Harrison. It was like 07 to 11. was kind of his prime, 06 to 11, whatever it was, 07 to 11. So that was kind of his prime, was a little bit after they won their one Super Bowl. But it is absurd. I just don't. I don't really understand their criteria. For me, I'm very much the peak over longevity guy, and we'll get to that more in segment 2. I think your dominance and your worth relative to your position league wide should lead to the Hall of Fame honor. I don't care about these guys who like, it's impressive at age 40 if you can have anything happen for you in this league, but I want the dominance to get in. If you're dominating this league of men of the best in the world, then you should be honored for it. I don't care. Like, if you just last a while, I don't think you should be in the Hall of Fame.
Couple more small points for me for Reggie.
Mm-hmm.
So by the end of Marvin's career, the last couple of years, Reggie was the number 1 receiver on the Colts. Yeah. When Marvin was closing out his career the last couple of years, it was Reggie's team. Smaller things here. On the Darrelle Revis graphic, when they're like, he held these guys under 35 yards, and it was like it was these elite receivers. Reggie was on the list of the like prime elite receivers that he held under there. And God, there was one other thing I cannot remember, but never mind. You can move on.
We'll keep the conversation going.
I'll think of it later and get mad then.
But you guys have identified the problem. Reggie Wayne going in makes too much sense.
Basically, right.
Yeah. And Zach, you mentioned dominance. I mean, when you think of the Hall of Fame, you think about all-time field goals leader, all-time scoring leader, Adam Vinatieri, right? I mean, we put him in there as well.
I don't, but yeah.
I remembered my note real quick, Derek. I remembered my
Yes,
note.
go.
So the whole he played with Peyton Manning argument, that one game Jim Sorgi played extensively against the Broncos. Who did Jim Sorgi throw like a 75-yard touchdown to? Reggie Wayne.
Wow.
Cut to the next segment. We're off.
So what would we change about the Pro Football Hall of Fame selection process? How about everything? We're going to talk about that when the Colts Squad Show returns. This portion of the Colts Squad Show brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. It is the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff. The final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite, Seattle, whether you're riding with the underdog, probably not a lot of fans of this show because it's New England, or you're building one last same-game parlay, this is the game everyone's been waiting for. This is where the predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's the perfect way to cap the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting from kickoff until the final whistle. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season, well, it's over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. The Locked On Colts Squad Show is also brought to you by ZocDoc. Finding a doctor you actually like can feel like discovering a diamond in the rough. Sure, you want somebody who's in network, nearby, and has availability, but you also want a doctor who listens and makes you feel comfortable and explains things clearly. That kind of doctor exists, and finding them is easy with ZocDoc. ZocDoc is a free app and website that helps you find and book high-quality, in-network doctors so you can find someone you love without all the hassle. We're talking about booking in-network appointments with more than 150,000 providers across all 50 states, covering over 200 specialties from primary care and dentistry to dermatology and eye care. If you're getting back into checking in more regularly on your health and you want to verify you find the right doctor for you, you can read verified patient reviews with ZocDoc so you feel confident choosing a doctor you actually like. Stop putting off those doctor appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL to find and instantly book a doctor you love today. That's ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL. ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL. Thanks to ZocDoc for sponsoring this message. And we're back on the Locked On Colts Squad Show alongside former NFLer Alan Pinkett, Zach Hicks, and a fired-up Jake Arthur. Your daily listen every day on the Locked On Colts Daily Show. I'm Derek Schultz, talking Pro Football Hall of Fame. As you know, full disclosure, we're waiting for the NFL Honors Show to see if indeed Reggie Wayne and or Adam Vinatieri ended up getting in this class, even though we're not really expecting either of them to get in. Maybe Vinatieri, I think he probably has a little bit of a better chance. But this process, and you know, to lend some clarity to this, and Zach, you could probably speak better to it than anybody else. They've ended up doing some tweaks here, but 49-member committee, So you need 80% approval for the modern era players, and it limits the class to about 4 to 8 new members. And you got to throw in the senior pool, like we talked about with Bill Belichick and some of that as well. It usually gets into about 3 to 5 modern era players, and then kind of the 1 to 3 combined from the smaller pool, which is the seniors, the coaches, and the contributors. But I think what ends up happening here with, just sort of limiting the numbers and things like that is, we've had a log jam at times, and then we've had big classes come in and they decided to kind of scale that back a little bit. But maybe, we were talking about this before we went on the air. Maybe they jerked the wheel a little too hard because, yes, you want it to be selective, right? You want it to be a high bar. It's the Hall of Fame that we're talking about here. We don't want the Basketball Hall of Fame where it's like Maurice Cheeks and people like that. You know what I mean? No offense to Maurice Cheeks if he's listening to the show. We want to have like the truly elite superstar players, but I think in doing so, they are, making it a lot more difficult for certain positions as well, where, a top 10 and top 11, top 12-ish wide receivers are having to wait a long time while people are banging the table for maybe not even a top 25 quarterback in Ken Anderson. And I think that's really what's sort of bothersome for me about the process.
Oh, if we're talking not top 25 quarterbacks all time, there's another one who people were upset he wasn't getting a first ballot Hall of Fame because he's going to get in the next couple of years, but that's a conversation for another day. Mm-hmm. I think ultimately the Hall of Fame really killed themselves by being too lenient for most of their history, right? Is having these big classes of what's the worst argument you ever hear when it comes to the Hall of Fame? Can you tell the story of the NFL without this player? Can I tell the story of the NFL without Nick Foles? No, but should he be in the Hall of Fame? Absolutely not. Put his football in the Hall, put his jersey in the Hall of Fame, but I'm not putting Nick Foles in the Hall of Fame. I'm not putting Joe Flacco in the Hall of Fame. So why do we have to put in the Joe Namaths of all time just because he had one good prediction?
Joe Namath is the worst quarterback to be in the Hall of Fame.
Well, as of right now, there's going to be one more here in the next couple. No, I'm just kidding. I'm going a little far with that one. But because they set this standard of sentimentality with the story of the game, with the big market love, for most of their history, it created this weird backlog where we have to prioritize these. Oh, we had this one guy waiting for 15 years and we just, gosh darn, we loved him in the 70s and 80s. We have to get him in over, legit players that should be Hall of Famers or whatever, or we have to get these other guys in. And then when they finally realize that we're taking too much sentimentality into this equation and we're not prioritizing the best players, they've now made this a very strict process to get in, but you've already backlogged other players that have been worthy of it. So you're punishing Reggie Wayne for your mistakes of the past. You're punishing Torrey Holt for the mistakes of your past. There's even some first ballot guys, like guys who should have been on a first ballot and had to wait a couple of years for it for no reason whatsoever, But then again, we still let Devin Hester in first ballot. I'm sorry, Jake. I have to keep saying it because I love Devin Hester. He's a Hall of Famer for sure, but as early as he got in with all these guys that have to wait with the strict nature of it now.
If you're the best to ever do something, get you in.
At like 2 plays a game, 3 plays a game at it, sure. Get the best long snapper ever in there as well, Jake. But
the Bears don't go to that Super Bowl without him, Zach.
They don't go there without Rex Grossman either being a league average quarterback. We're not putting him in the Hall of Fame as well. Come on. No, I'm just kidding. But all this to say, I don't really know what the solution is because they put themselves back so much. Like, if you want to just be strict now, right? Well, you're not going to revoke all the Hall of Fame status of all the lenient guys you let in because they already had their moments. They had their legacy. They had all their pageantry and all that stuff. So being strict now, though, just punishes the guys who didn't get the benefit of that. And it's kind of just an unfair process at that point. But you already made the process unfair by being so lenient in the early parts of it. So I don't know what the solution was. I understand why they wanted to be a little bit stricter, but you've already set the standards for too long. It's hard to just rip that cord unless you want to just start the whole process over, which honestly is probably a better argument than what they're trying to do now. But it is hard to kind of undo something once you've already started it. So all in all, it's a weird dichotomy now where they're trying to combine, like they were like the Basketball Hall of Fame, and now they're trying to be like the Baseball Hall of Fame, where it's like nobody gets in unless they were like the coolest player ever. And I don't think you can do both. You got to pick a side, and they pick their side. And now that they're trying to revoke it, I just think it's a bigger mess than what they already had.
I kind of have like a multi-layered issue with the Hall of Fame process. Number one, again, they overcorrected to make it a little more stringent, the process. So you have to get 80%, and then the pool just shrinks so much. One way they've kind of aided that is if you got 70%, then you're automatically grandfathered in as a finalist the next year. So Vinatieri, he got the 70% last year, didn't quite make the cut to 80, but now he's a finalist again this year. So that part of it's fine. But I think you shrink the pool too much. But I've also kind of got an issue with the voters themselves. Like I think, number one, I looked at the list today. There are multiple people on there who are retired. And like, to me, I think if you're retired from the job of sports media, you probably should hang up your vote as well. There are people on there who like cover teams for team websites. I think that's a little biased as well. I know when I went and worked for Colts.com, I no longer could be in the PFWA during that time. And then when I moved on from Colts.com, I had to reapply to the PFWA. So like there's some acknowledgement that that is a biased position. And then just, Bill Polian acknowledging at one time he didn't remember, and then he had like conflicting statements that he gave out within the days following the Bill Belichick thing. And I don't know, just term limits, I guess, would be a positive thing to have. Like, I don't think anyone probably needs to be on the committee for 20, 30 years. Like, you could probably rotate, like beats bring in so many different people throughout a decade or so. Like you could rotate and churn out some different voters at times as well. It also helps give a fresh perspective. Like someone who started covering the league in the 80s, 90s, started witnessing a much different product than what they're seeing now. You know what I mean? So not everybody. I think some people are still sharp and still kind of vote with some integrity and stuff. But in general, I think it's good to get a fresh perspective in there every now and then, because the process just seems lost now. And like all of us are now, very few people are discussing the Hall of Fame process positively. It's kind of become a sideshow at this point.
Well, I wish I had some suggestions on what you could do to change how someone gets nominated and elected to the Hall of Fame. I wish there were some clear-cut like benchmarks you could establish. Like, for instance, a running back, you have to be voted All-Pro 5 times or rush for 1,000 yards so many times. But then if you do that, does a guy like Gale Sayers make it? Does a guy like Terrell Davis make it? And those were, to me, legit Hall of Famers. So usually the person that has that it factor is the one that gets in. If not, then there's a huge PR campaign for someone that, maybe is entitled to be in the Hall of Fame, but because they have a great PR machine, are able to convince enough of the voters to get in. And I know that, some former players have the ability to vote. And, Jake, you alluded to it. Once I got out of football, heck, I forgot everybody's name on the team I was on the year before. There's this sort of that.
Don't blame you.
You're not as intent on paying attention. I think the guys that have the ability to vote do take it seriously. They understand the impact they're making on someone's life when they cast that vote. But I wouldn't say they are day-to-day followers of all the transactions that occur in the NFL that would qualify them to say, yeah, this is a Hall of Famer. So having said all that, I don't know how you improve it. I know that the system they have set up now is to try to create as much objectivity, and fairness as possible. But we get what we get, and most of the time they end up being right.
Yeah, and real quick, I just want to add this, and then Derek can get a quick point in as well. we have analytics and data incorporated into every aspect of the NFL nowadays, and it has been for the last 15 years or so. And we can do era adjusted stats for players and such. So I don't know why we can't bring that into the equation, at least make that part of the equation, where even if we're looking at a guy like Gale Sayers or Terrell Davis or Sterling Sharp or whatever, where it's like, look at how fascinating what these guys were doing in their short peaks compared to the rest of the NFL in those peaks. And we can make the case with data analytics as well. I'm not saying that needs to be the entire argument, because there needs to be more than that, but I don't know why we can't incorporate that into our arguments, especially when we're debating like these quarterbacks and stuff like that, where again, the Ken Andersons and the Eli Mannings, like comparing them to their counterparts through analytics and data that we have available. And we can do era adjustment and talk about how good these players really were. Were they top 20? Were they top 25 players at their position all time? And if not, why are we even debating them? You know, Super Bowls be darned, you know, when it comes to this stuff. But I do think that should be part of the equation. We have all these tools available. We have hundreds of media sites that run on data and analysis that can compare eras. Why is this not part of the equation? Why is it just feelings of 80-year-old beat writers? I mean, look, respect to the beat writers. They've done great stuff. I'm being kind of antagonistic here, but like I do think we need to be a little bit more modern with this process rather than just the feelings of 50 people or 100 people.
Yeah, well, I just don't like the charity cases. I don't like how Ken Anderson becomes a rally the troops thing where, you know, other guys don't get that. And that's what I don't really understand, that we're banging the table for somebody of that ilk, as opposed to, you know, I think we need to be able to just appreciate a guy that was a really good player without making them into something that they weren't, you know, like I hate to make everything about baseball.
Very good.
Yeah. Like, look, I love Don Mattingly. Okay. I've got like a little figurine in the other room of Don Mattingly. Don Mattingly won an MVP. Don Mattingly had back issues, or else he would have been a surefire Hall of Famer. I'm fine with him not being a Hall of Famer. I still love his career and everything like that. And I think it's about, you know, appreciating those players for all Hall of Fames. That's how I feel. But I'll say this too, as much as we complain about it, look, this process isn't easy, right? Sometimes, you know, Alan, you know this guy, Bruce Matthews, that's easy. That takes 30 seconds at the table. And you say, Bruce Matthews, bang. Drew Brees, bang. Like, that's a Hall of Famer, right? There's open and shut. But then there's, you know, Robert Mathis comes up for discussion. And I love Robert Mathis, but that's a difficult, like, I can go either way on that. Like, I genuinely don't know whether or not Robert Mathis rises to the level of the Hall of Famer. And so I don't envy those people, because I think it is difficult. We'll talk about from the past to the present. It is Super Bowl 60 week. When we return on the Colts Squad Show, we'll go around the room with our Super Bowl 60 picks and talk a little bit about the game that we might see coming up here on Sunday when we return. This portion of the Colts Squad Show brought to you by our friends at Indeed. If you've ever hired somebody who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is when you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for. Trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs puts your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. Instead of struggling to get your job post seen, Indeed sponsored jobs helps that listing stand out. You reach those quality candidates, saving you the time and effort to attract the people that you want. In fact, according to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed are 90% more likely to report a hire than a non-sponsored job. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this Locked On Colts Squad Show podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. And we're back on the Locked On Colts Squad Show alongside the daily Locked On Colts duo of Jake Arthur and Zach Hicks, former NFLer and Notre Dame legend Alan Pinkett. I'm Derek Schultz. Super Bowl 60, Seattle and New England in Santa Clara. I'll be honest, maybe I've just been sort of trapped in the bubble of Indianapolis. I don't feel like, at least here, we're getting a whole heck of a lot of buzz. Like, you know, you see your buddies around or something like that. Like, hey, what do you think about the game? Like, I haven't had a conversation outside of with my Pats fan best friend back home in Connecticut. I've not had a conversation about this game just randomly on the street. I think we've talked more about the snow and ice and the cold, but it should be, at least on paper, a good matchup between these two teams. And, you know, Zach, Patriots pass offense wasn't great in their first three playoff games, and they get another elite defense, right? They went through Houston, they went through Denver, and now a really, really tough one again in Seattle. But I think the Patriots did a lot of things defensively that can cause problems for Sam Darnold and the Seahawks team as well. As firmly as I believe that Seattle is the favorite and they should be, I'm not shut off to the idea that there is at least a path to victory here for New England in this game.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And before we get into that, I do want to say I think the reason why there's not this like Super Bowl hype or this like big conversation about it is there's no villain in the Super Bowl this year.
Yeah.
You know, it kind of feels like what was the year with Stafford and the Rams versus the Bengals? It was like, I don't know who to hate in the Super Bowl. It's easy when the Chiefs are there. It's easy when Tom Brady's there. It's even easier when, some people were hating Cam Newton back in the day when he was going to the Super Bowl and stuff. You know, there's always a villain in the Super Bowl, which makes it easy to root against. Or, the Eagles won it last year. There was two villains because everyone hates the Eagles as well. But this year, because there's no like big villain to absolutely hate, it kind of dulls the conversation a little bit. But such fascinating teams getting here. Now, they have gotten here by traditional means in the sense of they've been two of the healthiest teams in football this year, and that's always the biggest key to getting to the Super Bowl. But really well-coached units, really well-coached teams, two teams coached by defensive, laden head coaches with Vrabel and McDonald going against the traditional wisdom a little bit. I think if you're looking who the better team is, like Seattle from top to bottom, I just think has more talent, the better defense, even though New England's defense is very, very good and very well coached as well. And in all those aspects that you look for in a Super Bowl champion. But at the end of the day, the reason why New England's going to have a chance is the quarterback conversation is always a big one, and sometimes we can see where the team with the not as talented quarterback can win in the Super Bowl. I think back to Peyton Manning with the Denver Broncos against that Legion of Boom Seattle defense. And what happened in that Super Bowl, one of the biggest beatdowns in the history of the sport in the Super Bowl. So that can certainly happen. But, the quarterback just changes so many aspects of the conversation. Drake May is either going to be the MVP tonight or the runner-up for MVP. And he had a fantastic season at such a young age. And even though his playoff run wasn't spectacular, he had to deal with a lot of the elements and 3 of the top 5 defenses in football that he played against as well. And I know this is another part of it. This is another tough defense they have to play, but it's going to be a really fun matchup. It's going to be a really fun matchup overall. I think there are ways that if May can get the downfield shots going, if he can extend in the backfield, they can certainly put up the points to win this game. And New England's defense has played really great in these playoffs as well. I know that the weather has been a part of it, and that's why they've been holding teams down a little bit more, but New England's defense has played very good football as well. So I think it's going to be a good game. As I've seen some people point out, we typically don't see back-to-back blowout Super Bowls. It's never really happened. So usually if there's one blowout Super Bowl, the next year it'll be kind of a closer game. I'm expecting a bit of a closer game here, but ultimately I think Seattle's a bit better of a football team, and I think they'll find a way, but I wouldn't be shocked of either outcome in this game because I do think both these teams are so well coached and ready for the moment. It's going to be a really good one, I think, and one that we're going to talk about for a couple of years.
Yeah, I think when it comes to the lack of buzz around here, Derek, it's the Patriots, which no one around here wants to see, but it's not even the hated version of it's a whole new thing. Like Mike Vrabel and Josh McDaniels are the only ties to the era where it was actually a rivalry with the Colts. And then the Seahawks are just the team that's geographically the furthest away. We never get to see their games unless it's prime time. So it's kind of like Zach said, there's just no sizzle to it for us here in Indy because there's just no one really to hate other than a lot of Colts fans will always hate the Patriots, as they should. But no, as far as the game itself goes, I'm looking forward to it. I really like Sam Darnold. I like Drake May as well. But yeah, I think Seattle's probably got a slight edge here. I look at one huge factor is their defensive front is pretty nuts. I like their defensive front 7 quite a bit. But then they've got the ultimate X factor in Rashid Shaheed, who is he's a big play in a bottle waiting to happen at any moment. He could return the opening kickoff. He return a punt for a touchdown. He is a big part of how the outcome could go. And if New England's smart, they may not even give him any returnable kicks. You know what I mean? I think he's that dangerous, and it's that big of a deal in a game like this. even though someone asked Mike Vrabel the other day if this is a must-win game. I don't know how that,
Absolutely.
how that really counts. Yeah. I don't know. There's always next year,
That always makes me laugh. I don't care how old that joke gets.
Yeah. It gives me PTSD to what Zach and I are about to face at the combine later this month.
Oh, yeah. I will say real quick, though, my one reason why I'm rooting for Seattle in this game, I firmly believe this in the bottom of my heart as a fan of sports. You have to suffer before you win. You have to suffer for a long time. And when I look at these two quarterbacks, one is in his second year, who has had this perfect situation with coaching and schedule and the defense and all these things. And the other one has been through the most suffering in a long, from seeing ghosts with the Jets and having to rebuild his career. I want this for Sam Darnold. I think he deserves it. And maybe that's just kind of where my rooting interest is here.
And the Panthers. He was on the Panthers with Baker Mayfield. Dark times.
He suffered, man. He deserves it.
Well, Jake, you had mentioned that this game didn't feel like it had a lot of sizzle, from a Colts perspective. But I think nationally, it's not that much of a fire because of the lack of stars in this particular game. I think quietly the NFL would have loved to have had the Rams in there. You talking Matt Stafford, who will probably be MVP, Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams. The Rams just had that star quality, and the NFL is always looking for ratings. And this may be one game where the halftime show has a higher rating than the game itself.
Worldwide, maybe worldwide.
Worldwide. Yeah. So, but looking at the two teams, I always pay attention to Vegas. I don't gamble, but if Vegas is going to pick a team, I always look at the point spread because most of the time they're right. I think Seattle is the better team. I think they play hard. Losing who was it, Charbonnet? Losing him, we'll see if that is going to matter or not. But it's a great story. I think that's another thing they look for in Super Bowls is a good story. It's a great story. This embattled quarterback who couldn't make it anywhere but kept the dream alive and finally made it to the right team to lead himself to the promised land, which is the Super Bowl. It's a great story. It's one that a lot of people, I think, could relate to, just like New England. New England just seems like this story was written for them. They went through, how is it to be a New England fan, by the way, to be consistently winning for like 20 years and then take 1 year off?
They didn't suffer enough, Alan. They didn't suffer enough. It's not a good story. Get out of here.
They only had
you get
one
the Celtics.
year.
You get the Celtics too.
And then this Vrabel guy who comes in and who's the savior. Also, it's like a return of glory because one of their own is back at the head coaching position, and the message he conveys is one of family and togetherness and love. It's a great story that he's brought back, the old regime to the new, and they just seem like a team of destiny. They probably shouldn't have beat the Texans. They probably shouldn't have beat a lot of teams, but they're just a team of destiny. It's their year, so those are two good stories that are colliding. But having said all that, I would have preferred to have seen the Rams.
Yeah, and and for folks, no one's discrediting the level of players on these teams. Like Seattle has star level players. They're just not people that like my wife recognizes. Whereas Travis Kelce is, Patrick Mahomes is, Joe Burrow is, Tom Brady is, Peyton Manning is, and you go back to all these past Super Bowls. I mean, I would even argue, like, even in some of those years, like Cam Newton, he was MVP of the league. Like, he was an established star at that point. Drake May very well might be an established star here very soon. maybe in 4 days, Drake May is going to end up being an established star in this league, right? Because that's what Super Bowls do when you win for these guys' careers. But as of right now, he's not. And I think Seattle is sort of the same way. I mean, hell, Mike McDonald could walk around Monument Circle right now and not a single person would stop him or have any idea who he was, right? But he's done an amazing job with this team. So I do think that plays into it as well, besides all the other good points about, Seattle being way the hell out of the way and people being sick of New England here. I think that's part of why maybe there's a little bit of a lack of buzz. But I agree. I think this is going to be a good and entertaining game. And for somebody who, to be totally honest, I don't really care who wins. That's the best kind of matchup for me, because then you just kind of sit back, relax, and you're just rooting to be entertained.
Yeah.
Oh, I love the commercials. My favorite part
it.
about the Super Bowl is the commercials.
Yeah, I think we're going too far with the previews for commercials that are going out there right now. That's a little goofy. But yeah, I will say this. Some of my all-time favorite Super Bowl winners and just Super Bowl teams have been those teams that are just like propelled by their top defense. The Legion of Boom, growing up and watching those early Ravens and Buccaneers teams. I mean, I guess I was really young, but watching replays of those, which we'll get to more in the last segment here. But I always remember that no-fly zone with the Broncos and carrying Peyton Manning to his final Super Bowl as well. Those are some of my favorite all-time teams. So seeing two defenses of this caliber in the Super Bowl, that's going to be the fun part for me.
You had the Kelvin Hayden pick 6. You had the Reggie Wayne celebration, the dice roll in the end zone in Miami. But 75% of this panel was watching Super Bowls before the Indianapolis Colts became part of our lives. So we're going to share some of our favorite big game memories. Not all of them are going to be Colts related as we wrap up the Colts Squad show next. This portion of the Colts Squad Show brought to you by Quo. New year, new systems. This is the time when a lot of us look back at the messier parts of how we run our businesses and think there has to be a better way. And there is. Streamlining your communications is one of the quickest upgrades you can make. That's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Q-U-O, the smarter way to run your business communications. Because when your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers. I love how simple Quo makes everything. Your whole team can call and text from one shared business number, so nothing gets missed. And Quo's smart AI tools automatically log calls, summarize conversations, and highlight next steps, so details never slip through the cracks. Make this year one where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free, plus get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to Quo.com/LockedOnNFL. That's QUO.com/LockedOnNFL. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. Back for final time on the Locked On Colts Squad Show alongside Zach Hicks and Jake Arthur of Locked On Colts, your first listen every day. Alan Pinkett, longtime NFLer, left Notre Dame as the all-time leading rusher in Golden Domers history. I'm Derek Schultz. I don't have any records, and people don't listen to a daily show that I do or anything like that. Let's talk about Super Bowl memories. And again, I gave the disclaimer, Alan, that you're going to feel impossibly old, especially when we go to Zach. But I actually want to go to you first because, look, I know you had some great Oilers teams there. You guys were consistently in the playoffs. You did not quite get to the mountaintop of getting to a Super Bowl, but I think a lot of people look really glowingly on the era of Super Bowls from that time with, you had the 85 Bears and you had Joe Montana and Jerry Rice, and you had some great Giants teams with Lawrence Taylor. And the Washington Redskins teams were amazing. That was a mini dynasty in its own right. And Zach, I think we'll talk about Washington coming up here as well. But, those were the Super Bowls that I grew up with as a kid, like the late 80s into the early 90s, into the Dallas Cowboys and all of that. Even though a lot of times it sort of felt like the NFC Championship game was the actual Super Bowl, there were a lot of memorable teams and a lot of fun memories.
Yeah, so the way I'll start is my earliest memory. So my fondest memory has nothing to do with the Colts, but my earliest memory of the Super Bowl actually entails the Colts. The first Super Bowl I remember seeing was the Jim O'Brien kick to beat the Cowboys in 1971.
Wow.
16-13 game over the Cowboys. That's the first Super Bowl I remember. I think I was either 5 or 6 at the time, but that's the one I remember. But if you the one that I remember the most, or had the most fondest memories, was when Doug Williams played in the Super Bowl and beat the Denver Broncos. And you remember in that game, Denver put up, I think, what 17 points real early. I don't know what the number was. Maybe it was 10 points.
I think it was 10. Yeah, 10. It was 10.
Yeah,
Yep,
I think
that's
it was
what it
10
was. It was 10
points.
Yep.
They put up, and he gets hurt and then comes back, and then the route is on. I think it was 35-10 at halftime. And the reason I say that is because I was playing at that time, but football's always been such a huge part with my family. We would all, we'd go make sure we went to church early enough in the morning so we get home in time to have dinner in front of the TV to watch the football game. Most of the time to watch, I'll say it, the Redskins. And our church service sometimes ended around 1:00. So a lot of times I wouldn't get home till like 1:30, 1:45 to watch it. But we did appreciate a late afternoon game. And sometimes the preacher would hurry up his sermon because he wanted to watch. Now that same church, by the way, the pastor is a huge Ravens fan. So what do you do? But that particular game, yes, there was some historical stuff. I guess Doug Williams became the first black quarterback to win the Super Bowl. But if you talk to him, it was like, well, I just happen to be black, but I played quarterback. But I think the media made more of that than really needed to be made. But for the team, I think it was just an outstanding win, and one that I'll always remember. And even though I was playing at that time, we played the Skins a year later and beat that ass when they came down to Houston. Beat a Doug Williams team in the Astrodome. So a year after that Super Bowl. So that's sort of my memory. And yeah, I just felt sorry for the Bills going 4 in a row.
Yeah.
And losing. But let me tell you something. Every other team in the league would love to go there 4 times and lose. So
that's been appreciated more as time has gone on, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, at the time, I mean, they were a punchline for sure, which is ridiculous to think, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I will say real quick on my Doug Williams story. I met him at the Senior Bowl a couple years back, shook his hand. His hand might have been bigger than me as a human being. Biggest hands. I've shook Will Fries' hand. He's like 6'6" or whatever. Not even close to as big as Doug Williams' hands. Those hands were massive. Really nice guy, though. Yeah, I have so many Super Bowl memories. There's really 3 that stick out, and one happened before I was born because, like, I was gifted this VHS tape as a kid of the '91 Redskins team, and like, as someone who never saw the Redskins win a football game like ever as a kid, like this tape was like, I had 3 of the tape by the time VHSs were no more because I kept buying them everywhere I saw because I kept buying the '91 Redskins because it was the most fun thing I ever watched. So I watched that all the time as a kid. So it's not my Super Bowl, obviously, but just that tape on that season. But I always remember, and this is what's going to date everyone here, first Super Bowl I ever got to stay up and watch. I was 10 years old. And this was 07, 08, I think, 10 or 11 years old. The Pittsburgh Steelers I think it was 05 actually. So I wasn't 10 yet. It was Steelers and Seahawks. So I was 8, I think, during that Super Bowl. And I remember because my brother, 4 years younger than me, right? He was 4 years old, and my mom was telling us we both had to go to bed. We were not allowed to stay up to watch Super Bowl. It was too late at night. My brother fell asleep. My mom came in and got me out of bed and let me watch it in her room down the hall. And I got to see, it was a really fun Super Bowl, right? You got to see the trick play, Antoine Randall throwing that touchdown.
Yeah.
I thought it was great, and it really hooked me on the sport. But the one Super Bowl that made me just fall in love with the sport and made it a thing where, like, I'm writing in my notebook mock drafts and I'm writing all because I just love the sport after this one was the Steelers and Cardinals Super Bowl.
Yeah, that was
Oh my gosh, it was so electric. And I remember watching the Cardinals throughout that playoff run, like that crazy first round game against the Packers. It was like 52-49 or something, or 56-49. And I was following their journey and following the Steelers, and then you just get memorable moment after memorable moment in that game, right? The Fitzgerald long touchdown reception, you think that's over. Then you see the greatest throw and catch in the history of the sport, in my opinion, from Roethlisberger to the back of
James
the end zone.
Harrison, 100 yards or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Like, it was crazy.
From that moment on, I was absolutely hooked on just the sport itself, everything about the electricity of it all. I think that was what, 2010, 2011, I think. So I was like just about to go into high
Super
school.
Bowl, 09, February
That's
09.
what it was, 09. Okay. So I was
early
like just about
years
to go
of
into high
Gary's
school.
house, and the fire department was going to shut it down too because he got too many people in the stadium.
yes, that's very true. But yeah, I was watching that Super Bowl, and I think soon after that is when I started doing these little mock drafts in my notebooks and started following all the draft nicks, and started really getting into the sport. And like, this is something I want to pursue in some capacity getting older. But that was really the one that hooked me so much, just as a fan of the game. Like, this is what the games can live up to being, as great as this. Maybe we will never see a Super Bowl as great. I know we've had some great moments sprinkled in there, like obviously the Eli Manning throw to Mario Manningham and the Malcolm Butler interception have been great moments, but just from an entire game of moments like that, I just don't think I don't think I've ever seen a football game as good as that one, honestly, in my lifetime. I just, from everything that happened in that, you got a full season worth of highlight plays and fun moments in one game.
So for me, it took a while for me to believe that positive things could happen to me as a sports fan.
Yeah.
Despite growing up in Central Indiana, the Colts weren't my first favorite NFL team. I was actually really taken by the Greatest Show on Turf. That was my first team. So the first Super Bowl I remember watching start to finish was the 01-02 Super Bowl that started the Patriots dynasty. And of course, the Patriots beat my Rams team. And then I started to phase into the Colts in the next year or two after that. And that's when the Colts started to get good and Dungy got around and they started making the playoffs and everything. But, the Eagles lost to the Patriots because I had begun to hate the Patriots before Colts fans really hated the Patriots, despite them being in the same division formerly. That, like, the Patriots being the Rams is what sparked my hatred for them. And they beat the Eagles. I loved Jerry Rice. So that was my first favorite player. So I loved that Raiders team. The Buccaneers beat them. They killed them in that Super Bowl. Yeah. So not until the Colts beat the Bears in the Super Bowl did I believe good things could happen for me as a sports fan. And of course, I knew the Colts would win that game, but I was waiting for the other shoe to drop, or like maybe the Patriots win was too much of a high. So that obviously leads us into the Colts-Patriots Colts-Bears Super Bowl. There has been no pinnacle as a sports fan for me than that, obviously. Obviously, the first touchdown, Peyton in the grasp of Tank Johnson and flinging it in the rain to Reggie Wayne for, I think, a 57-yard touchdown or 40, I don't know, like a 50-yard touchdown. And then Reggie doing his patented whatever dance that was. Bob Sanders being an absolute menace. He forced a fumble on Cedric Benson. He got an interception deep down the field. So Bob Sanders was incredible in that game.
Grossman threw some YOLO balls in that game, for sure.
Should have been MVP.
Well, Joseph Adai could have been MVP.
Dom Rhodes?
Dominic Rhodes,
It sucked that it rained that game, too. You don't have rain in the Super Bowl?
Yeah.
Hey, they still found a way to do it. But then as far as like really, really good Super Bowls goes for me, Steelers Cardinals was really hard to top. I was pulling for the Cardinals hard in that one. Me too.
Yep.
Patriots Seahawks was maybe the best one. I remember it was so insane just in the final few minutes. The Patriots kept scoring the Jermaine Kearse catch,
which nobody remembers now, right? Yeah, it's wild. Yeah, and then it's just so much. Like the Colts Saints one, I erased from my memory because that never happened. The Saints were a team of destiny that year. Obviously, like that was their first year going full bore after Katrina, and they obviously that was
that was their year, and the Colts just happened to be in the way of that.
It's God's team. You can't bet against God's team.
Yeah, the Colts could not possibly have gotten in the way of that. But no, and then now here we are, just maybe the Colts eventually get back to one, and then we just hope for the teams we're rooting for not to lose the Super Bowl at this point. So this year, I guess it's my feelings can't get hurt from the outcome this year.
Yeah, Colts fans, I think most of them with that Saints Super Bowl, it's like Men in Black with the memory erase stick thing. You just kind of erase that away. But what's always fascinating,
sometimes the narrative
breaking. I think Adam Vinatieri got in.
Okay. Oh, he did. Okay.
Cool. Yes, Adam Vinatieri got into the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Good for him.
So it sounds like not Reggie Wayne then.
Relieve some of the logjam then.
Yeah.
But
yes,
yeah,
the kicker logjam.
Jack's so angry about it.
When is Tom Dempsey getting in?
We're just in the final minute here to make Alan feel a little bit better. First one that I truly remember was Washington Buffalo. I grew up a big Giants fan. It was great living in Indianapolis for both of those Giants runs, but this is a true story. In 2011, I got to cover the Super Bowl and go. We did the show from Radio Row, radio show all week. I got down on the field afterwards. I did not have clearance to get on the field. I was just told, act like you know what you're doing. Scooped up some confetti and sent it to my dad, and I said, I am done. I am never going to be a Giants fan again. Nothing will ever top this, and they have sucked ever since. So it's worked out perfectly for me. I got to kind of ride off on the white horse with the Giants Super Bowl win in Indianapolis. That whole week was really surreal. It didn't even matter that the Giants were here. Just a great week for the city.
But that's class real quick. You want me to?
Yeah. Let's go ahead and do it. Yeah.
All right. So Vinatieri made it. Drew Brees, Larry Fitzgerald, Luke Kuechly, and Roger Craig is the senior who we were just talking about.
Okay.
So,
I'm fine with that.
No Reggie Wayne, obviously.
Yeah. No Frank Gore.
I was wondering if
Frank Gore.
I was wondering if Suggs was going to get in. Some people seem to be pushing that, but yeah, that seems okay to me. That seems okay to me.
No,
thanks so much for joining us. Yeah, that's surprising too. Actually, I didn't even realize the fact that you didn't mention Witten. Thanks for joining us here on the latest edition of the Colts Squad Show. We'll be back with you after the Super Bowl to finally tie a bow on the 2025 season. Tuesday night at 9:00 as our offseason schedule continues. And as always, the Colts news cycle never really ends. So keep it locked on Jake and Zach every day on Locked On Colts, and be sure to follow at Locked On Colts on socials. Check out our other great content on YouTube and TikTok, and we'll see you next time right here on the Squad Show.